The rain fell steadily as Detective Emma Brown stepped off the train at Bath Spa Station. The grey skies overhead mirrored her mood. She had left behind the bustling streets of London not for leisure, but for a case that had baffled the local police. A body had been discovered in a sealed room of an abandoned Georgian townhouse on Westgate Street. The victim had no identification, no known enemies, and no clear cause of death. Yet someone had gone to great lengths to hide him. Emma adjusted her coat and walked briskly through the cobbled streets. Bath was quiet this morning, with only the occasional umbrella drifting past a row of honey-stoned buildings. She arrived at the address, number 42 Westgate Street, a 3-story building with cracked windows and ivy crawling up its facade. Despite its elegance, there was something unsettling about it, as if time itself had avoided touching the place. She was greeted by Inspector Harris, a stocky man in his 50s with a tired face. "We've not touched a thing inside, waiting for you," he said gruffly. "Thought it best not to disturb whatever's in there." The interior smelled of damp wood and dust. Wallpaper peeled like curling fingers, and the floor creaked beneath her boots. They climbed the narrow staircase to the second floor, where the sealed room had been found behind a fake wall. It took them an hour to breach the plaster properly without damaging the scene. Inside, the air was colder than the rest of the house. A single chair sat in the center, and slumped on it was a man in a dark overcoat, his face lifeless but calm. No blood. No sign of struggle. Just a faint mark across his temple, as if touched by something old and unseen. In his pocket was a key, rusted ornate, unlike any Emma had seen. She turned it over in her palm. There was an engraving. M.H. "There's no record of this room on the building's plans," Harris muttered. "It's like it never existed." Emma said nothing, her mind already ticking. She asked to be left alone. Once the others stepped out, she walked around the narrow room slowly, noticing a floorboard near the chair that had a slightly different tone. Kneeling, she pried it up. Beneath it, wrapped in oilskin, was an old leather-bound notebook. She opened it, and her breath caught. The first page read, "This house was never meant to be found. The key is not for a door. It's for what lies beneath." Just then, a sharp knock echoed from downstairs. She froze. The house was supposed to be empty. Emma stood still, every sense sharpened. The knock echoed again. Not loud, but deliberate. Slow. As if whoever was there wanted her to hear it and feel it. She slipped the notebook inside her coat and stepped quietly toward the staircase. The hall below was empty. She moved down the stairs, avoiding the boards she knew would creak. The air felt heavier now, as if the house itself was holding its breath. When she reached the bottom, she saw the front door was still locked. No one was outside. Then she noticed something chilling. The cellar door, which had been bolted shut with rusted chains earlier, now stood ajar. She reached for her torch and unholstered her sidearm. "Who's there?" she called, her voice low but firm. No reply. She edged towards the cellar, the smell of damp earth and mold growing stronger with each step. The stairs creaked beneath her weight as she descended. At the bottom was a stone floor and old wooden shelves, half-rotted and covered in cobwebs. But what caught her eye was a large patch of earth in the center, freshly dug. Someone had disturbed it. Recently. She crouched, inspecting the soil. Her fingers brushed something smooth and cold. She pulled it free, a small porcelain doll's head, cracked across one cheek. On the back, etched faintly, were the same initials as on the key, M.H. Suddenly, the cellar door slammed shut above her. The sound reverberated through the stone walls. Emma spun around, torch beams slicing through the darkness. She wasn't alone. Footsteps. Not heavy, but careful. As if someone or something didn't want to be found, yet wanted her to know it was there. The footsteps circled the cellar slowly, staying just out of sight. Emma raised her weapon, voice steady. "Show yourself." Then, silence. Until a whisper brushed her ear, though no one was near. "Leave, while you still can." Her torch flickered, then died. Emma stumbled up the cellar stairs, guided only by the faint light from her phone. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She didn't look back. Not until the door to the cellar slammed shut behind her once again. Only this time, it locked itself. She leaned against the wall in the hallway, breath shallow, hands trembling. That whisper had been real. The cold breath on her ear, the footsteps circling. None of it could be explained by creaking pipes or overactive nerves. Someone, or something, was down there, watching. The next morning, determined to find answers, she walked into Hayworth Village and headed straight to the library. The librarian, a kindly woman named Elsie, gave her the name of someone who might help. Noah Pembroke, a local historian known for his obsession with the darker corners of Yorkshire's past. Emma found him in a cluttered bookshop, buried behind stacks of leather-bound volumes and parchment scrolls. He looked up, startled as the bell over the door rang. "I'm looking into an old house near the edge of town. It used to belong to a Margaret Hatherley," Emma began. Noah's expression changed instantly. He stood slowly. "That house should have stayed empty." Emma frowned. "Why? What happened there?" He hesitated, then gestured for her to sit. He pulled a thick ledger from beneath the counter and flipped it open, revealing sketches, faded newspaper clippings, and handwritten letters. Margaret Hatherley was the last in a long line of residents linked to Hayworth's most mysterious tragedy. In the spring of 1824, 5 children from the village vanished without a trace. Rumors spread that someone from the Hatherley estate was involved. The town turned on them. Margaret disappeared a year later. No one knows what happened to her. Emma felt a chill creep up her spine. "I found her initials on a key, and a doll's head buried in the cellar." Noah closed the book. Then it started again. She blinked. "What started?" He lowered his voice. "The house calls to people. Those who enter, especially if they're blood. It doesn't let go. And the secrets buried beneath it, they don't like being disturbed." Before Emma could respond, her phone vibrated. A message. No number. Just 4 words that froze her blood. "You were warned. Leave." That night, Emma lay in bed, wide awake, her mind circling like a hawk above the moors. The message hadn't come again, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. She wanted to believe it was a cruel prank, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. That warning had weight, and something old behind it. The morning light did little to calm her nerves. Driven by equal parts fear and determination, she returned to the cellar. This time, she brought gloves, a torch, and Noah. He stepped cautiously behind her, the beam of his own torch cutting through the dust and cobwebs. "You said the doll's head was near that shelf?" Emma nodded and led him to the spot. Together, they began shifting aside old crates and broken furniture. Beneath one rusted trunk, they found a loose floorboard. Emma pried it open. Underneath lay a tattered cloth bundle. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a faded child's bonnet, crusted with age, and a small wooden carving, a child's toy perhaps. But what caught her eye was the symbol etched into the base of the wood. A circle surrounding a jagged line. It looked almost burned in. Noah stiffened. "That's the mark." "What mark?" He knelt beside her. "It's called the hollow sign. It was once used by families who believed their children had been taken by something not of this world. In some old folk stories, it's carved into cribs or buried beneath doorways, a symbol of protection. Or warning." Emma stared at it. "Then why is it hidden here?" Noah didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the far corner of the cellar, where a bricked-up archway stood out awkwardly from the smooth stone wall. He ran his hand across the brick. "This wasn't part of the original foundation," he said. Together, they began carefully removing the loose bricks, one by one. A stale earthen smell escaped as the wall gave way to a narrow passage, barely tall enough to crawl through. "Emma, are you sure about this?" Noah asked. She nodded. "If that thing wants me to stop, then I need to know what it's so desperate to keep hidden." They crawled inside. The passage descended into a small chamber no bigger than a pantry, with earth walls and no light but their torches. In the center lay a wooden chest, old and blackened with damp. Emma's fingers hovered over the latch. She opened it. Inside were dozens of bone fragments. Tiny, delicate, unmistakably human. Tucked among them was another carved toy and a lock of golden hair. Emma covered her mouth. Noah whispered, "These weren't just lost children. They were taken here." Then Emma's torch flickered. And somewhere behind them, from the tunnel they had just crawled through, came the soft creak of wood and slow shuffling steps. The air felt suffocating, thick with the weight of the unknown. Emma's heart hammered in her chest, every instinct screaming for her to run, yet something deeper, a need for answers, kept her rooted to the spot. Noah stepped closer, his face pale in the dim torchlight. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Emma listened. The footsteps were faint but unmistakable, dragging, like something or someone was following them, inching closer with every passing second. "Stay still," she mouthed, and then without a word, she turned toward the narrow passage leading back to the cellar. The flicker of the torches made the shadows dance, but there was something different this time, something unnatural about the silence. With one final glance back at the pile of bones and the lock of hair, Emma grabbed Noah's arm and pulled him toward the exit. But the steps behind them grew louder, more urgent, like something was closing in. When they reached the end of the tunnel, the atmosphere shifted. The warmth of the house seemed miles away, replaced by the chill of something ancient and sinister. Noah's hand trembled in hers as they scrambled up the remaining steps back into the cellar. But as they turned the corner, Emma froze. Standing in the doorway was a figure, draped in a black cloak, their face obscured by shadow. Noah gasped. "Who?" The figure didn't speak, but as Emma's eyes adjusted to the dim light, she saw the unmistakable shape of a symbol on the cloak, the same jagged circle that had been carved into the wooden toy. A low voice broke the silence. "You shouldn't have come here, Emma." Emma's breath hitched. She tried to speak but found her words trapped in her throat. The figure took a step forward, and something in the air shifted, crackling with a strange energy. "We've been waiting," the figure continued, the voice unsettlingly familiar. "Waiting for you to come to us. But now, it's too late." Noah's voice shook. "Who are you?" The figure stepped into the light, and Emma's blood ran cold. It was someone she knew. Someone from her past. Her mother. Emma's world spun around her as her eyes locked on the figure before her. Her mother, standing in front of her after all these years. The same face, the same eyes. Yet everything felt different. The warmth that had once been there now replaced with a chilling emptiness. "Mother," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure nodded slowly, the cloak shifting with the movement. There was no warmth in her gaze, no recognition in the eyes that once held love. It was as if the woman before her had been replaced by something else entirely. "You shouldn't have come here," her mother repeated, her tone devoid of emotion. "The house, the secrets, they have a price." Emma's mind raced, trying to understand. The mother she remembered had been kind, nurturing, protective. This woman before her was a stranger. A stranger with the same face, but a coldness that froze Emma's very soul. Noah stepped forward cautiously, his voice steady despite the tension. "Why are you here? What is this place? Why have you been hiding?" Her mother's lips curled into a faint smile, but it was empty, unsettling. This place was never meant to be found. It was built on lies, on blood. And you, Emma, are a part of that. The words hit Emma like a slap, leaving her breathless. She tried to step back, but the walls seemed to close in, trapping her in the cellar with the woman she once called mother. "You were always meant to find this place, Emma," her mother continued. "You just didn't know it." "What do you mean?" Emma asked, her voice cracking. "What happened here?" Her mother's eyes gleamed, a cold fire lighting in them. "Your father's secrets. My secrets. All buried beneath this house. And now they will come for you too." Noah glanced at Emma, his expression filled with fear and confusion. "Emma, what is she talking about?" But before Emma could respond, a low rumbling sound echoed through the walls, followed by a sudden crash from somewhere deep within the house. It was as if the very foundation of the house had shifted, awakening something buried long ago. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel it now. The house was alive, breathing with an ancient force that had been dormant for far too long. The danger was real, and it was closing in fast. Her mother's eyes darkened as she took a step back. "It's too late," she whispered. "You should have stayed away." And then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone, disappearing into the shadows like a wisp of smoke. Emma stood frozen, her mind unable to grasp what had just happened. She turned to Noah, who was staring at her with wide eyes. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice shaking. I don't know what to think anymore," Emma replied, her voice barely a whisper. "But we need to leave. Now." As they turned to make their way back through the cellar, the ground beneath them trembled again, and the distant sound of something heavy dragging across the floor echoed through the house. The house was waking up, And it was hungry. As they hurried through the darkened corridors of the house, Emma's heart raced in her chest, the weight of the mystery pressing down on her like a suffocating fog. The distant sound of something heavy dragging across the floor echoed through the walls, growing louder with each passing moment. It felt as if the house itself was alive, its hunger for secrets and truths driving it into a frenzy. "Noah," Emma whispered urgently, her voice trembling. "We need to get out of here. This place. It's not just a house. It's something else." Noah's face was pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't understand. What did your mother mean? What is this place?" Emma shook her head, trying to gather her thoughts. "I don't know, but I feel like everything is connected. The secrets, the darkness beneath the house. It's all tied to my family. My father, my mother. They were hiding something. But what?" Suddenly, the rumbling noise grew louder, closer, and Emma's breath caught in her throat as the floor beneath them trembled. The walls seemed to bend and groan, the old timbers creaking with an unnatural force. It was as if the very foundation of the house was protesting their escape. "Noah, we have to move faster," Emma urged, grabbing his arm and pulling him along. They turned a corner, only to stop dead in their tracks. At the end of the hallway, a door stood ajar, its edges glowing faintly with a sickly green light. The air around it seemed thick, charged with an energy that Emma could feel deep in her bones. "What is that?" Noah whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't know," Emma replied, her throat dry. "But I think that's where we need to go." Before Noah could respond, a sudden sharp scream echoed from the room behind them, followed by the sound of something crashing violently against the walls. Emma spun around, her pulse racing. "Someone's in there," she said, her voice tight with fear. "We can't just leave them." "No, we have to go," Noah said, grabbing her arm. "It's too dangerous. Whatever's happening in this house, it's not something we can fight." But Emma stood frozen, torn between the fear of the unknown and the nagging sense that someone, was calling out for help. With a deep breath, she made up her mind. "I can't leave them. I have to know what's going on." She stepped forward, pushing open the door. As it creaked open, the room revealed a scene that made Emma's blood run cold. A figure lay on the floor, tangled in what appeared to be chains, their body covered in bruises and cuts. A man. Someone she didn't recognize. His face was pale, his lips cracked and bloodied, and his eyes locked onto hers with a desperate intensity. "Help me," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. Emma froze, her heart skipping a beat. She knew she had to help him, but something in his eyes, something about the way he looked at her, made her hesitate. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. The man's breathing was shallow, his body trembling as he lifted a hand to point towards the far corner of the room. It's in there," he whispered. "The truth. The thing you're looking for. But it's not what you think. It's not just your family's secret. It's much darker." Emma stepped closer, her eyes scanning the room. A heavy chest sat against the wall, its lid slightly ajar, as if something inside was straining to escape. "What's in the chest?" she asked, her voice low. The man's lips curled into a pained smile. That's where it all started. The darkness that's been feeding on this house. On your family." Suddenly, the air grew cold, and the faint whisper of a voice filled the room. It was soft at first, almost like a wind, but then it grew louder, a voice Emma could barely make out, whispering her name. "Emma! Emma!" She spun around, her eyes searching the room for the source of the voice, but there was nothing there. The man's face twisted in fear as he tried to speak, but his voice failed him. His eyes darted towards the chest, and in that moment, Emma realized something was terribly wrong. The chest. It was moving. The petty, once still, now quivered on its own, as though something inside it was fighting to break free. Emma stepped back, her breath shallow, her heart pounding as the very air in the room thickened with an oppressive force. It was no longer just a mystery. It was something much darker, much more sinister than she could have imagined. Noah, standing at her side, looked as horrified as she felt. "We need to get out of here, Emma. This place is cursed. Whatever's in that chest, it's not something we can face." But Emma couldn't move. Her eyes were locked on the trembling chest, and something deep within her told her she had to open it. She had to face whatever had been buried for so long. The man on the floor, his voice now a rasping whisper, spoke again. "You don't understand," he croaked. "You're too close. It'll claim you, just like it claimed the others. Your family. They tried to hide it. But it's always been here. Waiting." Emma's mind reeled, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. This was it, the thing her family had been trying to protect her from. The secret that had been buried beneath the house, beneath generations of lies. She stepped closer to the chest, her hand trembling as she reached for the lid. Noah grabbed her arm, his grip tight. "Don't do this. You don't know what's in there." But Emma shook her head, her eyes wild with determination. "I have to know. I can't run anymore." With a final, resolute pull, she lifted the lid of the chest. The room seemed to hold its breath, and Emma's eyes widened in shock. Inside the chest lay a book, a thick, leather-bound tome, its pages old and yellowed with age. But it wasn't just a book. A dark, pulsing energy radiated from it, and Emma could feel it deep inside her chest. This was what had been hiding all these years. This was the source of the darkness. Noah took a step back, his face pale. "What is it?" Emma reached for the book, her fingers brushing against its cover. The moment she touched it, a jolt of electricity shot through her, and her vision blurred. Her body felt heavy, as if the weight of the house itself was pressing down on her. The voice in the room, now a loud, deafening whisper, seemed to come from everywhere surrounding her. "Emma!" She gasped, her mind overwhelmed by visions of the past, of her family, her ancestors, and the terrible mistake they had made. They had uncovered something in the house, something they were never meant to find. And in their greed, they had unleashed it, a curse that fed on the souls of those who dared to uncover it. Emma could hear her mother's voice, faint and distant, as though calling from the very walls. "I tried to stop it, Emma. I couldn't. The curse. It's been with us for centuries. The house, the land. It was never meant to be ours." "Noah!" Emma gasped, her voice weak. "It's not just the house. It's us. We're part of this curse." Noah looked at her with wide eyes, disbelief written all over his face. "What do you mean?" But Emma didn't answer. She couldn't. The weight of the truth had become too much. She turned back to the book, her hands shaking as she opened the first page. The words written there were ancient, a language long forgotten. As she read them aloud, the room seemed to come alive. The walls groaned, the air grew thick with malice, and Emma could feel the presence closing in on her. "This is it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "This is the truth." The house seemed to shudder, its foundations trembling as if the very earth beneath them was rebelling against the awakening of its long-buried secret. The air grew colder, the shadows in the corners of the room twisting and writhing, as if alive. And then, as the final words left her lips, everything went silent. For a moment, Emma thought it was over. That the curse had been lifted, that the truth had been uncovered and the house could finally rest. But then she heard it. A low, rumbling growl, deep in the earth below them. The floor beneath her feet trembled once more, and Emma knew without a doubt that the curse had not been broken. It had only just begun.